Right. Good morning, everybody. My name is Stephanie Witt. I work at Emanate Health. I don't know if all of you guys are familiar with Emanate Health. We incorporate Foothill Presbyterian, Queen of the Valley Hospital, and also Inner Community Hospital. I have worked here for almost 11 years. I really enjoy working for Emanate Health. I enjoy all aspects of being a nurse and in the leadership role also. I Something about me, I started here as a new graduate nurse at this very hospital. In fact, I'm sitting in the office where I had my first interview as a new grad, and I was sitting right over there. And
What?
so, uh, it shows how much I love working here because I'm still here. And I remember when I interviewed as a new grad nurse 11 years ago, they were not hiring new grads. Took me a year and a half to find a job as a nurse. And I had to volunteer for that year and a half after I graduated nursing school to try to get to know people, to get my foot in the door, just to get an interview. And when I had my first interview in this office, they actually told me they were not going to hire me because they don't hire new grads generally, and they definitely don't hire them in the emergency department, which is where I work. And so I was grateful for the interview and for the experience, but something must have happened and they changed their mind because I got a background check call a few days later, and they ended up bringing me on as the first new grad nurse in this ER. So that's just like a little bit about where I come from. And I did a lot of volunteering and things like that. So I don't know. I just thought you guys might want to know a little bit about me and how I got all started into this. But I love new grads. I love hiring new grads. They have a special place in my heart. And I think that they bring a lot of wonderful things to the table. So I just want you guys to feel confident going into your interviews that, an experienced nurse is really great too. That's obviously a good thing, but um, also new grads have a lot to offer. So I just want to let you guys know that. That's all I have for now, unless you guys have anything else for me. I guess we can start kind of like if you were coming into an interview, right? Usually someone will come into an interview. You want to dress, business casual, depending on the environment. For nurses, a lot of the times people just come in, business casual. They bring their resumes with them, usually bring more than one because sometimes you will have a group setting for an interview. Sometimes I would bring like a charge nurse into the interview. It depends on the position you're interviewing for and things like that. So sometimes it might be one person, sometimes it might be multiple people. So you want to bring copies, even though you've already sent them their electronic copy. Um, okay, so I usually introduce myself, and then one of the first questions I always ask is like, "Oh, I've told you about myself. Tell me about you." Um, and usually they're referring to your resume, your background, and maybe the first question I would ask is, "What brought you to apply here?" Does anyone want to volunteer for that question?
I can try answering this question.
Okay.
So, in regards to how you stated that you work at Emanate, I think the question I'm going to refer back to it again. You stated why it is that we want to work at Emanate, right? And so the reason why I want to work at M&A is because I've had a lot of clinical experience there. Not necessarily that I was like in a paid CNA or anything like that, but in the terms that I had my very first foundation clinical experience in nursing school, starting out with M&A, the Foothill Hospital to, going more in depth into nursing school and going into the like intercommunity hospital doing assignments there. So I've got to see a lot of like the aspects of M&A from where it's just a hospital setting to also the rehab centers, just how well encompassed the hospital is in general. And in general, I saw a lot of elderly people, geriatric people, and I love working with the population. I'm grateful to have met so many amazing people along the way during this process. So starting with M&A, being that it's a very comfortable environment for me and it's where I started my foot in nursing school, I would really appreciate being able to start the next part of my life here. Thank you.
Since I live in the West Covina area, working with Emanate Health, especially Queen of Valley Hospital, will offer me the opportunity to serve the community. And it is also known for the gynecological services and the NICU. So I want to utilize this opportunity to enhance my skills and provide comprehensive care to women and newborns. I'm also interested in seeing how the new roles of nurses are as more technologies integrated into the healthcare system. Because I know for Eminent, they have this robotic surgery program that they're currently utilizing, and I want to see what the roles of nurses are changed to, or what like type of new tasks that they have. So I want to be part of that system.
Okay, awesome. Um, Anybody else want to try that question?
Sure, I can give it a try. The reason why I'm applying to Eminent Hospital is because of the hospital's mission statement to provide care that is body, mind, and spirit, which is something that I've learned in nursing school is where we take care of patients holistically. So we're not just taking patients of their physical needs, but also their emotional and spiritual needs as well. And that is something I really want to encompass in the care that I provide and build rapport on top of that, and just be as approachable as I can with the patients, as I know there are times where there'll be difficulties with patients because when usually if they're admitted to a hospital, it's not one of the best days of their lives. There's something going on, and there are some challenges and hurdles that they're facing. And I hope to have the opportunity to provide the care that would make their day a little bit better if that's possible.
Thank you. That was a really good answer. Um, so tell me about a time that you went above and beyond. And it could be for either a patient, a family member, or a coworker.
I can give it a go.
Okay.
Um, to be honest, if I'm being fully honest, is that I don't think I have truly went above and beyond for any one particular patient. And the reason is because I believe that every patient deserves equitable care. Should have receive the care that we provide to all patients and building that rapport and making them feel comfortable in that regard. That's why I was like just having conversation with them and determining what their needs are and listening to the concerns in that regard. That way I can provide the most patient-centered care for that particular patient because each patient is different and each patient's needs are also different. They may also come from different cultural backgrounds and different needs and have different practices that might vary from one patient to another. So having those conversations and building that rapport, and that's how I feel like I can best provide the care that is most patient-centered.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody else want to?
Um, I have a different take compared to Jackie. I think that going above and beyond might be required because every patient is different and has different cultural backgrounds. So you might need to um, learn more about their culture, learn like some parts of their language so you could communicate their needs. Because I did have a patient and during clinicals who was specifically Chinese speaking, and in Glendale Adventist, they didn't have any Chinese speakers or translators offered to them. So I was mainly the one who was able to communicate his needs and also communicate the doctor's orders or care plans because he had no idea what was going on. Neither did his son. And it made me realize that for me to actually work and utilize my Chinese skills in this field, I need to improve upon the medical like terminology. And that's how I will go above and beyond for different populations within the hospital setting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Tell me about a time that maybe you came across a problem or something that didn't seem right. It could be something with communication, um, where maybe things didn't go the way they were planned. And how did you solve that problem? How did you, turn the outcome into a good outcome? And it could be related to anything, a patient, a family member, maybe a coworker. And if you don't have any clinical examples, you can use any example that you would like to use.
I actually do have a job on campus, and I've been working there for about a year and a half or so. And so my job right now is I work in the IT department on campus. And basically, what I do is I basically help the files, even School of Nursing files, and get it into the repository system that we have here at school. And over the years I've been working here, I've been promoted to student manager and think working in the process. But while also doing that, I face a lot of challenges. For example, like our supervisors left, a lot of student workers also left because of all the like changes that were happening. And so I got hired during that time where a lot of things were changing and a lot of people were also leaving. So in regards to how I was able to make the situation better was help the office become more organized. I know we did also move into a new platform called Asana to do our schoolwork, to do our job in general, but within that framework, we I helped like create projects that were more well organized for what we do. For example, our job also focuses on creating a culture environment that is safe for everybody. And so we like to create parties or events that just makes everybody feel more welcome. And alongside being a student manager, I also work as a culture lead. And so with that, I basically created the entire project for how we're going to be doing these graduation parties, how we're going to be doing celebrations for these students whenever their birthdays are coming up. And so doing all these celebrations while also working alongside as a student manager and being a nursing student, it was a lot to handle, but I'm grateful for the experience because when it comes to the hospital setting, I want to have to create a cultivate an environment where everybody feels safe, and I have experience doing that in my job. And I know when I have now cues where some people don't feel welcome and when some people do. And so if I work later on, hopefully, in the position that you are maybe or anything like that, I can help everybody feel more welcome and ingrained within the team. Thank you.
I love that example. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
So I think a time when something felt really wrong was during my first ever like leadership experience at my current job. So currently I work as a medical assistant at an outpatient clinic in Orange County. And I think it's a really special place in my heart because I grew up in Little Saigon where there are mainly like Vietnamese people. And many of my coworkers are immigrants and they have a hard time um kind of adapting to the American climate while also like returning like what they're most used to. And on this particular day, my supervisor had to be out because I think she had just like a personal or family issue. And it was just the three of us, like the doctor, um, my coworker, and myself. And it was really overwhelming because this was still maybe the first month or two of my job, and I still didn't really completely know how to run the clinic on my own, but I just had to that day because of circumstances. And it was just really overwhelming seeing, looking at the list, seeing like 50 patients that day, and being able to like, just be overwhelmed by like everything. Um, I'm a really idealistic person, so I like looking at the big picture, like being holistic, but in this case, I really needed to tap into like being detail oriented. So in this situation, I kind of the first hour or so of the day, I like was freaking out. It was like a mess, but then I had to take a break and really step back and be like, oh, these are the details. So what I did was I kind of like called like a sort of like a group meeting. Um, I sort of listed all the tasks that had to be done that day. Like one person had to be in charge of the desk in the front, and then one person had to do intake and documentation, and then the doctor had to do his role. So I broke down the tasks to easier bits. And since I do a lot of reflection, like I like to understand myself and my coworkers like really deeply, I really rely on my intuitive understanding of people and their personalities to see who does what best. And so I figured that I should be at the front desk because I'm one of the few people who know how to deal with like the paperwork, the insurance. And then I figured that my coworker could deal with the intake, even though I could technically do it, but she's just better, she's more personable. And then the doctor could be in charge of his role, which is taking care of the patients. I think this whole experience showed me that I'm pretty well-rounded, I'm pretty adaptable, and I had a good understanding of all the roles that I've been in. So it's not just my understanding of my coworkers, it's my understanding of my environment as well. And I also took out from that experience that if I really need help, I can always ask another leader. Like I could call my supervisor in her free time, or I could just ask the doctor since he's also in charge. So yeah, it was a really good learning experience, and it helps me become more comfortable in my job.
Very nice. Thank you. So I don't know what departments you guys are, have in mind or where you're going to apply, but what do you think as, like if someone were applying here, like in my department in the ER, I would ask them something like, and you can answer how it fits best to where you want to work or where you would be applying, but what do you think your biggest challenge will be as a new grad student? Getting, coming in for the first time, what do you think some of the challenges might be? Aside from we'll already know that you're not going to be an experienced nurse yet.
I can give it a shot. Um, Funny enough, actually, I'm interested in applying to ER positions, because during my clinical residency, I actually completed my residency in the emergency department. And one of the things that I would say I had a challenge facing was a task of delegation. Um, because there was this one particular shift that I want to point out. It was I had two patients that were waiting for beds that were upstairs, but there were no beds available at the time. However, we have the two open beds where we are circulating ER patients where it's constantly in and out, discharging and admitting patients during that time. And having so many different patients, but also managing the two patients who have their inpatient orders already that are scheduled, and but being able to maintain and take care of other patients that are coming in the ER with the other different chief complaints and doing different assessments. Um, it was definitely a very overwhelming situation. And for that particular shift, my preceptor was giving a little bit more of autonomy for that particular shift as we're getting close to the end of my residency. And the one thing that I've noticed and my preceptor noticed was that my um plan of delegation, providing like, be more prioritizing with certain tasks that needs to be done beforehand. However, I've come to learn that there's okay to ask for help in certain situations like that. It is definitely very overwhelming, and there's certain tasks where the team can come and help. And I've learned it's how should I put this? It's not just you that is working and taking care of patients, but it is definitely a very team-oriented um unit. Of course, like everybody comes to help however they can, and it's okay to ask for help. The one thing I've found in myself is like I didn't really want to ask for help that particular day because I had the nerves or like the shyness of not wanting to ask for help. If I ask for help, it seems like I don't know anything. So at the time I just want to, I'm capable of completing these tasks and focus on completing those said tasks. But overall, after reflection of time, just learning that it is okay to ask for help. That's why we have other nurses, your circulating nurses, your CN, ER techs that can come and help you with completing certain tasks, and you can focus on your specific nursing task that you can complete, whereas the ER tech can't complete, or other people may not be able to complete because it's not within their scope of practice.
Right, it's very good. That is very true. Always ask for help. When you guys start working as a nurse, you'll realize that even 10 years in, you'll still be asking for help. Okay, anybody else?
So for me, I'm a very talkative person. The words out of my mouth. I'm a very talkative person, and I like creating relationships with people in general. And so during my clinicals, I always strive to meet all the patients that my nurse has and try to learn more about their things, what they did in their life. So like obviously when you go to the hospital, we always did our clinical papers, and part of being APU, our clinical papers was always the therapeutic portion about the patient. What is their spiritual thing? What do they like in their life? How what gain garners them hope and things like that. And besides just filling out all the clinical information, that was my favorite aspect of the clinical care plan portion because I got to learn more about the patient and what they like to do, what their life constitutes of. Because as we know, human beings are not just their work and their, physical ailments.
Very
So I really like learning about their people and just who they are and people. And so the biggest challenge for me as a new grad nurse, I feel, with learning new tasks, given that I won't have all the skills yet, was as also being able to create those personable relationships with these clients, with these patients, because I have to do all the clinical tasks that was lessened for me during the clinical setting with the nurse. But also alongside that, having to create the relationships with the patients that I really want to have, learn more about them, and really learn from every patient because they all teach me something so far. That's what's how it's happened for me. So, for example, during my 212, so the first med surg rotation, I had a patient who had a what did he have? He was a confused patient and he was in a respiratory unit and he was confused and he was restrained and he didn't know, where he was at, anything like that. And I had him the first day that I was there and I was in this unit for 12 weeks or 10 weeks straight, but in the same unit consecutively. And over the process, I was able to see that patient and I strive to go see that patient even if my nurse that I had that day didn't have that patient. I always strive to go by his room and say hello, say hi, even if he never responded to me. And by the near end of the rotation, he was able to actually be oriented and when I stated bye for the last time, he said thank you back to me. And it felt really refreshing to me to even have done the minimal things to strive to actually know this person, even if it was that they can respond to me that much. It's just I got out of my way to talk to them and to get to know them, even if they couldn't, verbally do it the first time. So overall, my biggest challenge, stated again, is getting able to know the person behind the patient, as well as doing the tasks needed for caring for a patient. Thank you.
Very nice.
I would go with the question too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the hardest part working in the ER would be flexibility. I think flexibility in terms of admitting new patients and then adding that into your schedule, while also flexibility when the resources are not available for you and you have to make ways to like resolve that. I I'm a perfectionist, so I like to know what is going on immediately once I go into the field, but being able to accept the uncertainty and then still striving to solve that would be the I think the hardest part for me to do, but working in the ER and because I'm always problem solving with new situations, I want to learn those skills in this fast-paced environment so that I could apply it to other departments like in med-surg or either in matern and gynecology units. That's like my hope in how I would transfer these skills into other departments.
Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
I have one question. Particularly in the ER, what type of performance evaluations were conducted and what type of KPIs or metrics that you guys use to evaluate nurses' performance?
Yes, you get performance reviews in all departments, anywhere you work. It's usually an annual review, and some places also do like a first 60-day or 90-day evaluation when you're new to see where you're at. But also as a new grad nurse, like for example, Emanate Health, they have a wonderful new grad program where you'll go through a whole entire program and you'll have small evaluations throughout, not only with the education department, but with your preceptor and maybe even your leader, so that you know where you're at and how to improve and what do you need. And so it just kind of depends on which kind of eval you're talking about. But just a standard one, everyone gets one every year. But also we do a lot more when someone is new and maybe even more if you're a new grad nurse. Yeah, so yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask what is the structure of the preceptorship like? Can you like explain how long that is and what usually would the preceptor be doing with the new grad nurse?
Yeah, so our program here at Emanate Health, you usually get a 3-month program for you to be on the floor with the preceptor. That also is layered on top of a new grad class that you're in. I believe that's about 6 weeks long, and you go once a week. And then you do your days on the floor also. It's all incorporated. And then also if you work for like either a critical care unit like ICU or ER, you'll also have an ER class that you take on top of that. Sometimes we'll put you in like a dysrhythmia class that lasts for a few weeks. There's a lot of educational things you get put into as far as being a new graduate nurse. And then, you know, when you're on the floor, usually a leader will ask you what your preferences are. You know, it's important for us to also know what you're comfortable with because, you know, a lot of places, I know for me in particular is that, you know, we want, you know, people to feel happy and comfortable where they work. Because that's also very important. So we might ask you what your learning style is. Do you prefer to be with one person for the entire orientation, or do you prefer to have different people? Because some people want to see how multiple different people do things and kind of make it their own. Some people feel more comfortable with just the same person because they get to know them and they feel more comfortable with them. But usually, you know, you're assigned to somebody, and then if they're off on a day that you can't, you know, because of all the classes you're going to be in, your schedule will be a little more hectic. You know, sometimes you'll switch out to somebody else, which is a good thing. Also, if you're a night shift or day shift, or mainly a night shift nurse, a lot of people start on the night shift. We try to put you into the day shift for part of your time so you can experience the different shifts, because a lot of things are very different about working days versus nights. So it's good to get your hand in it. Sometimes we'll send you with an RT person for the day so you can see how they do the ventilators and all those things. Even send you with the wound care nurse for a day so you can kind of immerse yourself in the different things that are going on, you know, with your patients.
I wanted to ask if there were any support for healthcare workers who wanted to advance their career opportunities. For example, if I were an RN and I wanted to, you know, become an NP, would there be any resources for that person?
Yes, so a lot of people do that. I in particular did that. I started as an RN and then I advanced my degree while I was working. So many places have education reimbursement, which is nice. So while you're working, they will help pay for your school. We have that here at Emanate Health. And we have, you know, there's just a lot of support. It depends on like where you're going and what degree you're getting. But if you know you're going for your NP, we have a lot of great connections within our ER because we have a whole staff of NPs that work here. So if you ever wanted to do like your preceptorship, or when you're actually working, if you work in the front of the ER, you'll have a ton of interaction with those people. We have really great relationships with the doctors and NPs. So you'll have that opportunity to, you know, pretty much whatever you need. You have a lot of good connections to help you get there. Some people advance their degrees for, you know, different reasons. They want to do a leadership role or they want to do an education role. So we will connect you with the right people. And also, you know, when you guys are writing papers, a lot of your advanced degrees will ask for you to do a project within your hospital or something that you can improve within your hospital. And so we're all here to help with those ideas and help facilitate those things. So the answer is yes.
But my question was basically, given that like you stated you worked there for about 11 years and you stayed at the same place, besides it being a sentimental and important place to you, I wanted to know what made you want to stay there and, you know, stay in that same hospital for so long.
So I can think of so many reasons. I don't even know where to start, but let's say when I first started working here, I was so grateful that somebody took the time to interview me as a new grad nurse. And I'm going to tell you, when I had my interview as a new grad nurse, and I still remember this like it was yesterday, I had some scenario-based questions. It was different, where the questions are more like, you have someone coming in with chest pain, what are you going to do? And then when I answer, there'd be another follow-up question, follow-up question, follow. It was very clinically driven. Not all of the questions, but for some of them. But you know, it was a stressful, and I was very stressed in my interview, to be very honest with you. But I was very grateful that they gave me an opportunity. And then when they said, oh, well, you're going to be the first new grad that we're going to hire in the ER, so we're going to see how that goes, I kind of felt like I had a duty to fulfill, that I was going to do a really good job so I could pave the path for all the other new grads that they're going to want to hire in the future. So I really felt like I had a mission. And then I was a little bit afraid because I thought people were going to be, you know, judgmental of me. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to make it, because not only have I not had any experience, but I had been out of nursing school for almost a year and a half, but trying to find a job, just any job. I wasn't planning on getting the job that I wanted even on the first run. It just happened that way. I applied everywhere. I applied for jobs in the hospital that weren't even nursing jobs. I was just hoping to land anywhere in the hospital. And then, so I was thankful they gave me an opportunity. When I took the opportunity, I was met with the most support I could have ever asked for in any situation. I was the only person in the new grad. They brought me in, and it was a program, but it wasn't a program because I was the only one there. I thought I was in the wrong place. I called people because I thought, I'm here on my first day, I'm in the wrong place, no one else is here. And they said, no, you're the only one, we'll be right there. And so I did the whole like orientation by myself, and it, you know, but everyone was so supportive from the very first time I entered into the ER. Everyone helped me. Everyone was at the bedside. Everyone was there assisting me, answering all of my questions that I didn't want to ask, encouraging me to face situations that were challenging, even though I was a little hesitant to, you know, do things. And I just knew almost instantly that I was going to, you know, do well, not because I knew a lot of things or felt confident, but that I knew I had the support that I needed. And then in return, I made sure that once I was able to do things competently, that I was also offering help to other people. And when you offer help to other people, it always comes back. So it was building those relationships. They have encouraged me to, you know, get different degrees to pursue my education. I had a lot of support from like the education department and from people who were over me to, oh, try this, do this. This is a different way you can do that. And, you know, the mission statement, keeping people well in mind, body, spirit, in a compassionate, safe environment. Like I felt that that was actually what was happening. Like it really matched what it said. And, you know, and I just, yeah, I really felt, you know, patient interactions, you know, you have to have that in you already, that you want to be a nurse. And so you're doing it because you like to help people, because really that is the reason why you show up every day. That is the reason. But it has just been it's been an overwhelming experience. I didn't get my degree to come into this position ever. That was never my plan. My plan was to, you know, be an RN. I wanted to get my MSN. I wanted to get my BSN first because, you know, I thought, well, everybody's doing it. I should have that. What if it's a magnet hospital? All these other things. And then once I was in my bachelor's program, I thought, oh, okay, I'll just finish and do the master's while I'm working. And the leadership position was started off like, oh, do you want to help us with some of the things in leadership? And so I would help and do. I was on a bunch of committees. I joined tons of committees. I loved being on the committees and trying to make change. And then it just kind of like, I kind of just happened into this role. It wasn't like I'm going to be a nurse and then I'm going to be a director. You know, first I was the charge nurse, and then I did some of the manager stuff, and then I came into this role. But every step of the way has been a journey. And so, you know, and now that I'm in this role, I can tell you I have hired a lot of new grads. and I have coached them all the way through, and you know, very successful stories. And they've worked here a long time now too, so it's all good. Everything's good. So that's kind of just, you know, and I could go on forever, but that's just some of the reasons.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I have been able to be an observer in all of this. My name is Karen Arisman. I'm Director of Outreach and Alumni Professional Relations for the School of Nursing. One caveat, I am not a nurse. I always say I'm a very good time. Nurses scared me when I first entered my role. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm dyslexic. Why am I here? But I have fallen in love with nurses, and I'm a passionate person. I care deeply, and some of those things really align with nurses. And so I hope you see me as the bridge to your community. I want to be that. There was at times I wanted to cry when I saw you guys interviewing. I love APU nurses, and I love our alumni. They have incredible stories, and they've gone out to do amazing things. And I know that you will as well. And so anyways, I just want to just encourage you that if you have questions, if you want to connect, if you are in this place where you are unsure about what to do in your career, we have a career center at APU that will help support you. We have an online nursing group called apuconnect.com. It's got quick buttons for mentoring, for review my resume, help me with a mock interview. So those resources are there for you for the taking, but you got to ask, you got to enter in on them. But reflectively, I just wanted to, before we move on and do some reflective talk, I wanted to just reflect on what I've heard today. From those of you that have interviewed, I heard cultural sensitivity, patient-centered care. I heard authentic answers, that you guys were really being yourself. Nobody was making up anything. You just brought yourself to the table. Agile, I liked your what you said, Elizabeth, and your story, that you were nimble and agile and flexible. Jackie, you had talked about the theme of asking for help and even overcoming the fears of not looking like you have it all together, because I think that that's a true thing as well. Sudha, every time you answered a question, you asked the question, so gave yourself time to think. And at the end of one of those, you even had talked a long time and you summarized yourself. So that would almost be impossible for me to do, but I really loved that. And then I think all of you kind of talked about your strengths and your challenges. And so it created just this openness to learn. And then Stephanie, what I heard from you when you talked is like, one of the things, we all want to work at a place that feels good. We're all going to work, but when you're at a place that really aligns with who you are and the mission, work is more meaningful. And you talked a lot about the culture, which that would be something I'd be looking for in working there. I liked even what you talked about leadership. There just seemed like a camaraderie that was there. You talked about support. You talked about it being in an environment where it was okay to learn and encouraged to learn and advance your career. And I loved what you stated about the mission statement and how that really not just is something that they slap on a wall, but is something that your organization lives out. And so Stephanie is not one of our alumni. I reached out to one of our alumni who's the CNO. I don't know, Melissa Howard, how long has Melissa been CNO?
CNO, her role has got to have been at least 10 years, but I couldn't say for sure. But I know she's been working at this hospital for like 20 something years.
Yeah. I was thinking 10 myself, but I didn't know.
Yeah, that's just a guess.
So you never know where your nursing degree is going to take you. Melissa didn't know that, but she shared Stephanie with us. Can you just reflect on some of the things you had? And then we had someone share a resume, and I would love for you to kind of, we might pull that up and then you to look that over, because one of my questions is, nowadays, you talked about how hard it was to get a job, but sometimes applications are a table thick. How do you get your resume to get noticed? That would be a question I have. So can you do some reflection with us about what you were looking for, hiring?
Okay. So let's see. I have some notes here. I took just a few. First of all, you guys did all great. I would hire all of you. You guys did a great job. I think you were very, sincere in your answers. And I also heard, I second what Karen said. I heard a lot of really great things. Some of the things I liked is that, somebody mentioned the mission statement, that you knew where you were applying, where you're applying, you should research them and find out a little bit about them. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about all the things that they offer, but the mission statement's always a good thing. Kind of what their directions are as far as that goes. Being very specific. So, when the interviewer asks for an example, they're looking for something that really happened to you. And I think a lot of you did a great job answering that. I want you to always know that, and I also, when I had my first interview, I did not realize this either, but your other jobs or volunteer experiences, they count. Customer service is very important in nursing. The patients don't know that you're doing your skills correctly. They don't know. All they know is that they want someone that they can trust, and someone that's going to help them in their time of need. And so some of the things in your interview questions, always incorporate those things, because, we can recite what we learn in skills and what we, the science behind it and what we're doing and why we're doing it. But, things that and every interview is different. But for me as an interviewer, I like to hear the human side of it, the connections. And if you don't have those, like even if you worked at another job that you had customer service or things that you did there, I heard some examples in the interviews that were really great about birthdays and whatever it is that you did. But, for your patients and your coworkers too. I mean, you're at work for a very long time and you guys count on each other and you're a team. So I always like to hear about, even if it's other jobs, because you can bring what you've learned in those other jobs. And even though it's not a nurse or it's not anything close to being a nurse, it still applies, and it applies strongly, more than you would think. So just those things that you guys talked about as far as like other jobs that you had, those are really good examples. What else did I write here? And then I heard a lot about, culture and things like that. And I think that all kind of encompasses, like, there's a person here and they're probably here on their worst day. So how can we help them navigate that and explain things in a way that they can understand? They're talking to a lot of medical people, doctors, nurses, whoever's coming into their room. And I don't, half the things that we say to them, they might not understand, or maybe they can't take it in because they're not feeling well. And so it's very important to display your good communication skills and how you overcome challenges and how you can explain things in a way people understand. And it's not just about the patient, it is about their family member. And just, it's the little things that count. It's the little things. Are they warm? Do they have something? Are they hungry? Is there something you can do to help them, be in a place that might be very scary and loud, and things like that. So always use your examples of those kinds of experiences.
Stephanie, do they still give a lot of scenario questions in interviews? I mean, you said that all varies.
Yeah, You know, it does vary. I work with a lot of different leaders here in this hospital, and unless you're an experienced nurse, there may be some scenario-based questions. One of the questions on this sheet here is like, tell me about it. I think something about being in a code. And so, you know, if you've actually experienced the code during your clinicals, you can speak honestly about that. You know, I've never heard someone say like, oh, you know, it's a code blue, give me all the steps. You know, because you're going to learn that. You're going to be in a new grad program. You're not expected to really know everything, but I believe that I've seen more questions based on like the human experience and how we can take care of the patient's mind, body, and spirit. Same thing, like the mission statement, in a safe environment and compassionate environment. And I think for me, that's been my experience. But you know, you could always, you know, they might ask you something like, oh, if you have chest pain, you know, it just depends on the leader too, like what are their focuses. But you know, maybe if you're experienced nurse, they might ask like, oh, if you have, you know, chest pain and a stroke and this, you know, who would you take first and why? Or, you know, things like that. But I generally haven't heard a lot of that in my experience.
Okay. Do you want to go over that and review that? You might have that in front of you, Stephanie. What are the things that stand out to you, and how does Jackie, when he goes to apply for a job, get this particular resume noticed?
Okay, so I mean, it looks good on the top. Education is always, we need to know that. License and certificates, those are good to list for sure. Clinical experiences, I don't know that you need to list that. We also do mock interview workshops at Emanate. If you guys are ever interested in coming to them, they're very good. They sit all the students at a table and they go through different leaders and do the same thing with these questions. And I have heard pretty much across the board that if your resume is looking heavy, you can not put the clinical experience.
Okay.
Up to you. Related experiences. Volunteer is always good. Yes, that you were an EMT intern. Yeah, I think those are all good things to put. Those are all really good. I would definitely keep that. And I like it that it's one page. I did notice at the top there wasn't like an opening statement. You know, sometimes that helps, not a long one, but just something very brief that kind of gives you an example of who you might be. Because this is good. It tells me your name and like where you went to school and your licenses and things like that. But sometimes a small, you know, something at the top does help. It will, if I have like 50 applications that all look the same, that might, you know, encourage someone to choose one over the other.
So you would say that over the clinical experience?
Yes, and again, this is my opinion, but that's what I would do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you state an opening statement, do you mean something sort of like a quote, like we aspire to live by, anything like that?
No, just something about yourself. I don't have any examples in front of me, but I'm sure you guys could look them up on resumes. You know, I'm so and so, and you know, I'm the reason why you're applying to the, you know, to where you're applying, and maybe something that you're passionate about, or some, you know, something that gives them something besides just a list of what, because it's really hard because you're applying for jobs now online, so it's not like you get to face with anybody.
Right.
For me, my experience was when you're in clinicals, in fact, the person that got me here to volunteer and then also helped me get my first interview was actually my clinical instructor. She also worked here. And so I think building your relationships when you're in your clinicals and showing them who you are in those clinicals and getting to know, like when you're on the clinical site, like who is the manager, who is the charge nurse, who is the, who can I introduce myself to them, just building those relationships so that it's not just a resume, but they can actually match it to somebody, especially if you're a volunteer and things like that. It really helps. So yeah, I think resumes, I don't think your resume will first go to like an HR department, and then, they just, they go through them and put them to the correct people in the correct departments that get, that we get applications from. So, we glance over your resume, and then, it's not a full in-read detail until usually when you come to the interview, then we take it out and we really go over it in detail to see like, where you worked before and where you might have experiences at. And like I said, in when I applied, I didn't put I had any work experience because I thought that my other jobs didn't apply to nursing. So why would I list them? But I probably should have listed them because they were in customer service. And that was the advice that someone gave to me. It's like, oh, you should have put that on your resume because that actually would have set you apart from somebody else.
Do you have any other tips for resumes, like experience, especially for like no work experience and like no other jobs? Like how should they stand out? Because I was thinking clinical experience would definitely be one of them, but are there other tips that you provide to make it more personable and also like them willing to look at it?
So if you have not ever had a job before and you don't have anything to put on there, if you've had any volunteer things, I think that definitely counts. And it doesn't have to be only volunteering at a hospital. It could be anywhere. Maybe you volunteered at an animal shelter, or maybe you volunteered at, a retirement home, or it doesn't always have to be connected with medical. Maybe you're, whatever it is you were doing, it doesn't matter as long as it shows the other side of you. And I'm not saying that the clinical stuff does count, but I'm just saying if you've never had a job in the medical field, don't be afraid to list that you worked at wherever you've worked before, like Starbucks, wherever it is that you've worked, it's always good to put it on there because it does count. I've had people list, Subway on their resume, and then they have these great stories about working there. And it's like, okay, they're not in the medical field, but there's still a lot of things that people are in charge of that they have to do, different situations that arise. And so just when you think that something doesn't matter, it probably does. It does.
And some of our students study abroad. I saw Mexicali on the end of Jackie.
I saw that too. Yes.
So is that something?
Absolutely. We love that stuff. So yeah.
Okay.
Any experience outside of just the medical field is okay to include both.
Okay.
Or one or the other.
Well, I am going to stop the recording. My name is Karen Arisman. You can always reach me at sunalumni@apu.edu.